name is Sunny Mohanty. I'm the Regional Director of La Token. I'm based here in Singapore. Welcome to yet another episode of VCTV, the Venture Capital TV from La Token. So today we have a very interesting line of speakers. The topic is fundraising in the era of pandemic. We have Gavin Johnson, who is the founder and CEO of Genium. Hello, Gavin. We have Gary Fowler, who is the CEO and president and co-founder at GSD Venture Studios. We have Henry H. Gann, who is the founder and managing partner at HHN Capital. Hi, Henry. And we have Alina Georgescu, hopefully I pronounced the name correctly, who is investment analyst at Catalyst Romania. Welcome everyone to our show.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to start the panel with the questions around investments. So my first question is for Gavin, and everybody takes turn and share their views on this. So what are the most promising niches, sectors for starting a business in the current crisis?
Oh, in the current crisis,
yes.
I mean, I don't think you need to go much further than health tech, do you? Such is the irony. I know a lot of time and effort has been spent by governments in this whole track and trace, and in many ways that's a forerunner to, depending on your point of view, more insidious or more helpful health technology. But certainly, I think the pandemic has laid bare a number of shortcomings in terms of governmental response and coordination between countries. I don't think that's debatable. So you would certainly say, well, pharmaceuticals, health tech more generally, but I think specifically there's a number of other elements that have also been laid bare, and we were chatting just now about the rise of, I don't know if you want to call it office technology, but certainly connective technologies for the purposes of business. And we can talk about, well, you only have to look perhaps not much further than Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and you can begin to see that sort of collaborative working platforms, and we can mention many more, I'm sure, would also have benefited from this. You have so many people at home working from home where they can, despite the confusing advice from the British government on whether or not you should be at home, working from home. You can see that tools that facilitate connectivity, team working, collaboration are fundamental to, I don't want to say a new normal, but fundamental to working and future working as well. Because if we can do it now, then we can do it any time in the future. And if you start down that path, then you quickly get into, well, what is a company? Where do people need to be located? And you can, in some ways, I suppose in the face of globalization as well, you're really looking at teams that are based genuinely anywhere in the world. So if you can connect anybody from anywhere to work on any project at any time on any platform, then there's a big opportunity there, isn't there? You're potentially connecting the best people to do the right project at the right time. So yeah, I suppose there's big three there is the health tech, office tech. One may make a case for sort of gov tech, better communication from government, and more consistent, coordinated communication from government as well. So those are the three that just jump out to me.
Yeah, I agree. Health tech for sure. Can you please introduce a bit about Genium, like what you do at Genium and what has been your experience so far in terms of investment, so that our audience know what exactly your background is?
Yeah, sure. For my sins, my background is actually in law, in particular disputes, which is I suppose, an aggressive and potentially very emotional or emotive, anyway, part of the law. Everybody gets very angry. But prior to that, I studied engineering and science at university, and now I've gotten to a point with the rise of a particular area of interest for me, which is built environment technology. So you might think about smart cities, smart city technology, prop tech certainly falls within that, construction technology and so on. There's a crossover for me between the sort of science and engineering of the tech world and the legal work I do in the built environment. And Agenium is funded, well, it was founded on that principle of that intersection between technology and law, in particular for the built environment. So I do a lot of, I suppose, general business advisory work for startups, but also some legal advisory work. I still practice as a lawyer. But one element I've started to move into recently, which I suppose underpins every startup, is funding, and how do you attract funding? How do you get funding? Where do you look for funding? And advising startups. And there's a lot of platforms that do this. And we talk about collective investment platforms as much as we like, but that's really where Agenium came from, and where I'm working and where my focus is now.
Thank you very much, Gavin, for that. I'd like to quickly move on to Gary Fowler. Gary, hi.
Sure. Yes.
Hi, Gary. I have actually seen your episodes before. I've seen you before as well. So, Gary, I know you are an AI person, but still, I would like you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Gary Fowler, and I've been in the startup world for over 30 years. The biggest exit I've been involved in is ClickSoft, where I was on the original management team. We sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion in August of last year. I've been an MBA professor, MIT Skolkovo, marketing, and I started my first company at 21, made $9 million. And I did it because I didn't know what I was doing, but I did it, right? I was really lucky. So I've been focused on artificial intelligence. The company that I started 4 years ago is one of the top 10 AI HR tech companies in the world, Yva. I started with a billionaire from Russia, David Yang, who started Abby. If you know Abby, it's an AI language translation company. So we built that up from scratch. And today I have GSD, and that came from Mark Zuckerberg, by the way, Get Shit Done Venture Studios. So that's the name of my company. And what I see is that there's an incredible amount of talent, and Gavin just said it. And by the way, Gavin, I just wrote an article in Medium about what you talked about. So we need to have intergenerational, multicultural, regionally diverse teams, decentralized teams, especially now during the pandemic. There is a great opportunity for companies to grow, but it's using that technology. 5 years ago, I was introduced to the founder of Zoom, and Zoom wasn't anything at the time. Imagine how much Zoom has grown in the last few months. It went from 30 million, 6 months ago, active users to over 300 million daily users today. So we are connected. 92%, a few months ago, McKinsey said before the pandemic, 92% of worldwide corporations are going through digital transformation. That opportunity is today, because we are now there. We are now, imagine all the technologies, all the assistance that we can use to be able to really further the technology, because here we are in this one-to-one, one-to-many setting, but how do we get closer, and how do we evolve that technology through VR, through AR, through XR? I mean, those are the kind of things that I see. I believe that really this is really propelled in one way. The bad news about COVID is it's here. The good news about it is it's really helped society transition very, very quickly. And I believe now is one of the best times ever. If you're smart, if you look at your investments and focus on, and I love AI, right? I believe AI is the new electricity. Focus on technologies that are really gonna change our world. So that's where we are. And today I'm in Palm Beach, Florida. I got stuck in my house. I can't get back to Silicon Valley. So here I am, but it's great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Next, I'd like to move to Henry. Hi, Henry. Are you on mute?
Thank you for.
Yeah, let's start with a short introduction about yourself, and the question: what are the promising niches and sectors?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself a couple of times. Hopefully now it's working. Sorry about that. So thank you for having me here. Thank you for inviting me, Elena. So Henry on here. So I have two hats. I have an advisory firm called HHN Capital. I do a fair amount of work as an interim CFO, fractional CFO, focusing on finance, strategy, and operations. And then the second hat is I'm a venture partner for a venture fund, always looking for fintech, blockchain, consumer, AI, ML, and IoT. Those are the areas I spend a fair amount of time when I'm wearing the venture partner hat. Now, I guess instead of, I think, Gavin and Gary cover a lot in terms of starting new business. Can't agree with more, those two gentlemen. By the way, I'll trade with Gary anytime with Palm Beach with New York. So, if you take up on my offer on that one.
Come on down anytime, Henry.
So I'll probably take another angle to answer your question a different way. Instead of starting, certainly there are a lot of opportunities. Health tech, as Gavin mentioned, no doubt about that, just very natural with COVID. But I see a lot of businesses sort of pivot in the midst of COVID, right? So if you I've seen businesses, that might have done something and then they have actually, as a result of COVID, recently I've seen a company, they were doing like automatic doors. They were, how do I say it? So basically just doors are open, but instead they do facial recognition that doors open so that you don't have to touch the knobs and things like that. So they pivot a little bit. Also, there are a couple of businesses that actually plays the theme of COVID. Not that they were thinking about COVID, but just playing along with that theme. So there's one, it's auto checking, like self-checking, something like an Amazon Go. And there was another one like a robotic kitchen, a ghost kitchen. So once again, it's a great time to start businesses now, but at the same time, for the existing business, you can actually pivot a little bit as a result of COVID. So once again, I think Gary said it best. I think COVID literally catalyzed how, with digital transformation and changes. With people here in the States, we're very slow in adapt with, digital currency. I think that we still see a fair amount of people using cash. During COVID, I didn't use much cash because I didn't want to get another person's fiat money to potentially get their germs. So, I use a lot of sort of fintech apps. So I think, people are forced to adapt in a certain ways. So if you're smart enough, if you see the opportunities, there are just a lot of great potential investment, or just, you can even start a companies or pivot into different areas. So look at in the bad situation to make it into a great situation. So I will cap it at that.
Absolutely. We always see opportunities at the time of crisis. Thank you for Henry for that, elaborating that. Then we move to Alina. Yeah, please start by introducing yourself and yeah.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. Secondly, my name is Alina Georgescu. I'm an investment analyst for Catalyst Romania Venture Capital Fund. Catalyst Romania is a 15 million fund focused on Romania, and we are part of 3TS Capital Partners, which is our regional fund and team. In total, we are about 15 professionals, 8 nationalities, so pretty multicultural, so to say. And as investments, our main focus are startups who are active in the IT and C sectors. So e-commerce, media, and telecom. For instance, we have telecom in this field of digitalization. And software as a service. We also had, for instance, in Romania, we had Vector Watch as an investment wearable, which was sold to Fitbit. Overall, we have 2 directions which we follow. So we either invest in global challengers or local leaders. So these would be our core interest. It's always very hard to be the last person to answer to a question. So I totally agree with the previous speaker. And what I believe about this crisis, because I think we all agree that COVID started the crisis, it's that it's basically maybe the first crisis who didn't start as a structural problem, so a snowball, which you could foresee, but it was an event which caused everything. And being an event, it meant that everything happens very suddenly and that people really needed to adapt. But it accelerated trends. I totally agree with that. And we can also see that in government, for instance. A lot of institutions who weren't used to using, I don't know, online forms or basic online functions and which were very bureaucratic, had to adapt and had to transform. And I think it would have been impossible to do that in 3 months, which COVID did. So there is good in the bad, so to say. And I think we are lucky enough, for instance, us being an ITNC investor, that we saw all these companies. We used Zoom before, and we see a lot of competitors and a lot of companies who managed to move to cloud, to become online, and to have customers all over the world because they were global. So this is the main thing that happened. And I also think sustainability will be very important, because now people are more interested in acquiring things that are that have a bigger life, so to say.
Okay, thank you, Alina. Because you are from the investment, company does investments, and you own funds. So we'd like to know, what investments have you done in recent times? Like, we had COVID-19 beginning of this year. So have you made any investments through the months, like from February till today, any investments into any particular startup?
We didn't, because Catalyst Romania is a fund which doesn't invest in active companies anymore. We're in a portfolio management state right now, because we're currently fundraising for a new fund, which will be hopefully will be final at the end of the year. But what I would say, seeing the trends, I think it's a very good time for investments right now, because crises are usually very good timing for invest, because you usually get to see a very good leadership. You see which are the entrepreneurs who managed the crisis very well and very fast, and who could take the real measures to improve the company and not to put a lock on the door. And for us as an investor is also a very good timing, because we can prove that we have that we focus on stakeholders' trust, and a lot of VCs know that they have to diversify the portfolio, and it's important to do it now. What we did and what we're trying to do, of course, is to support our portfolio and to support our companies. So basically, we try to do follow-on investments in case it was needed. Although we are in the lucky phase of having IT companies, which means that they had some advantages in this time. So we didn't face big problems. But that would be my case,
okay.
So our case.
All right, thank you, Alina. And now, next, I'd like to ask the same question to Gavin. I mean, have you come across any investments being done in the last 3-4 months?
Yeah, I myself have done some investing in the last couple of months or so. I think the pandemic has done quite an odd thing in many ways. Yes, okay, people are not going to an office, but the number of startups that I've seen, particularly in and around the built environment, it's given those teams a chance to almost sit at home. They have their Zoom calls, their Teams calls, and then they can sit down and do two things. One, strategically assess their business and where they're going, and develop whatever they're developing, and have focused time, because they can't do anything else. So on the one hand, it's been beneficial. I mean, I don't know if you can call a global pandemic beneficial, but it's given people the opportunity and time to sit and reflect and focus not on all the other stuff you have to do when you're in business, but on how you are developing what you're developing. So a lot of companies, and you see it on a number of collective investment platforms as well, there's no slowdown, or there doesn't seem to be any slowdown in investment opportunities. And certainly startups are seeking money. It seems on a fairly unaffected rate, so it seems to me. So I don't think it's really made much of a difference. But I think, importantly, as Henry pointed out, this is underpinned by the technology that's allowed us to be at home and allowed us to continue to collaborate. Because you go back 10 years and you'd have probably struggled to do a conference call on your phone, mobile or not, and achieve the same. You're certainly not sharing a screen in an effective way. Although I think probably 10 years ago, you could probably do some collaborating on a Microsoft Word document, maybe something like that. I'm not sure. But now you have, all these collaborative platforms that allow you to do that. So I think for tech, it's not really made any difference. And certainly, if you're a smart tech company, and all tech companies should be smart, it shouldn't have made any difference. And if it has, as you said yourself, Sunny, maybe some questions need to be asked of how these companies are being run.
Right. I get that. Thank you, Kevin. Gary, I'd like to move to you asking the same question. So have you witnessed any real investments being done on any AI company, AI startup, maybe, pre-series A during this last 3-4 months, or significant amount of investments?
Well, I mean, so where we are, I have one of my portfolio companies in the process of being sold. Another one is getting a $2 million investment I'm working out of Japan with. I'm adding 3 more companies right now. So, I mean, for me, it's very active. I mean, this is not going to stop. I mean, when is a good time to invest? As Warren Buffett said, you go the other way of the market. So when people are all investing in something, you go the other way, it's time to sell, right? Go and use this as an opportunity. It's a great buying opportunity, and there's a lot of incredible companies out there. I want more. So if you got some from Singapore, have them give me a call. I love it.
Totally would love to do that. Now that I know that investing in Japan, obviously, in Asia, I'm sure definitely no.
Well, I'm working with like the CEO of Docomo, the largest telecommunications company in Japan. He's the innovations is a friend of mine. I raised money in China and Japan. David Yang is my partner, and Yva, who's a very well-known investor and billionaire out of Russia. So, I mean, we're active. I mean, seriously, if you got some cool stuff, give me a call.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. Thanks for that. Henry, so have you seen any, or have you made any investments in the last 3-4 months?
Yeah, so I think I would say early on, literally, I've been monitoring sort of since late December with COVID, and then obviously seeing how it plays out from Asia, then really spread around the world in February, then March, and so on and so forth. Now, I think early on, as I would say like maybe March or so, that's when the COVID was catching on globally. I think people were taking like a wait and see approach, the wait and see approach from an investment standpoint, in the sense that it created a lot of uncertainty. We see the market gyrated through a lot of volatility, literally in March and April. People were scared. People were feared. I think, yes, it's great, Buffett invests in the worst of time because that's when you get the best of deals. But at the same time, I think most of human beings are temperamental in the sense that, we're driven by fear. When you see the global economy come to a halt, people are like, holy crap. I said to myself, I'm like, wow, damn, I've never seen anything like this in my entire career. Warren Buffett said it best. I attended his online, virtually, his investment, his annual meeting. His thing is 80. He said he's 89 years old. He's turning 90. He has never seen anything like this. So if people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s said they have seen anything like this, I shake my head a little bit. So once again, to answer your question, I think people were taking a wait and see approach. I think a lot of funds weren't investing during that period of time. I think a lot of funds were just taking a wait and see approach. But as people are getting a little bit more accustomed in terms of doing, like Zoom meetings and getting comfortable, I think. My answer will be a combination of what everyone said. Alina also said it. I think a lot of funds were focusing on helping the companies in their portfolio companies to double up their bets. Maybe not making new investments, but there are other funds, with more dry powder, seeing opportunities. They see sort of a contraction in valuation. They're taking these investments. And some are just taking a wait and see approach. I think I'm seeing a bunch of combination, a lot of different things. I think if you have the dry powder, if you have a great deep network, yes, there are investments being made. A lot of the micro funds, they're not able to access additional capital. I don't have much dry powder. They're either focusing on their existing portfolios and not making a lot of investments. And then there are also firms that are just, let's say, take a wait and see approach. I think the really savvy ones with the dry powder is really seeing a lot of opportunities, because now you have a contraction of opportunities. The not so good startups probably dried out a little bit. The ones that are getting more traction with the bigger names are getting a lot more funding, would probably get, even raise more. So it's a combination of sort of what my fellow panelists, responded in addition to some of the comments I made as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Sunny, sorry. So if I may, in our case, we are really not allowed. I mean, we don't have the capacity right now to invest anymore. But it's true that as Gary very well mentioned, we have a very strong pipeline, and we are waiting. There are companies there, a lot of companies, a lot of amazing teams with great products who I'm sure will become known at a worldwide level. But so the possibility is there, and as when we become more liquid, I'm sure we will move on. But otherwise, the VC can really diversify now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that, Alina. I've got a question because I'm very curious, and if a startup comes to you with a very innovative idea, and the startup is in real estate or in a travel tech, would you consider investing if you buy into the idea? But obviously, you don't see immediate returns because of the obvious reasons. But the idea is fantastic, unique, and quite innovative. Would you invest into that startup? Real estate, travel tech, the industries which are badly hit right now because of COVID. Who would like to take this first? Okay, Gavin.
That's a good question, Sunny. I think my answer probably runs in two parts. One is, conceptually, does the idea make sense? Does the business plan make sense? Does the financials make sense? All that being the case, then yeah, of course, rationally you would say, well, there's a good business model, has a potential to be disruptive, and yeah, I don't see why not. And the other part of the question is more to do with human psychology. I'm not a psychologist, but as bad as this pandemic has been, my view, and I'm yet to be disproven, is that people are creatures of habit. And you see it even when countries are releasing the lockdown. People go crazy. They're out, they're on the beach, there's 1,000 people there, or they're out in nightclubs. I don't know if you saw pictures of London probably 2 weeks ago now. People going out in Soho, the bars are open, and there's 10,000 people stood in the street in Soho. People are habitual, and they will fall back into old patterns. And if that is borne out, then people will travel again. There's always a hunger and a desire to see new places, experience cultures and foods and so on. And then I suppose actually there is a third limit to all of this. Of course, if there is a vaccine, and there are many in trial, if one of those comes out, then people will feel safe to travel again, and again, COVID will become a thing of memory, and nobody should be affected by it, or not as much anymore. So I don't see why anything will change. I'm not convinced things will change because of human habits and behaviors. But I do think that, as we've spoken about, that the technology will improve how we work, but it probably won't change how we live, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it does, and I agree. I thoroughly believe this is just interim, temporary thing, and we should be very positive. And thank you for that.
Can I say something? Listen, this has not been the first time in recorded history that we've had these issues. So in 1918, if you look at the pictures of 1918, and you look at football, you look at baseball, and not soccer, but football, you'll see people had masks on. We've been through this before, the Spanish flu in 1918, right? At the time that Newton had written about gravity, there was an epidemic. At Tambor, Indonesia, in the summer of 1816, when the volcano went off and 200,000 people died, right, with the spread of volcanic ash, and they were locked up, and Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein at Lord Byron's house on Lake Como. I mean, it's not the first time, seriously. So we've been through this before. Look at history and figure out what happened after, that time. What happened after 1918? Well, there was a revolution because of electricity. Things changed. Look at manufacturing. It changed. So what you want to do is look at the future and not just dwell on today. So if you're saying about travel tech, look at it. Yesterday, I was presented with a very interesting startup out of Hong Kong that does travel. It's in flexible office space, but not like a WeWork, using some interesting AI, and I kind of like it. So it's not stopped. What about travel tech? So there's all kinds of different travel. If you're doing space travel, it's really good right now, right? Elon Musk is kicking it. He started that company, SpaceX, in 2002. People said he was going to fail. He wasn't going to do anything. Look at it now. Oh, he's a genius. He's on the road. I just wrote an article, so it's coming out in Forbes either end of this week or next on AI and the road to Mars. Yes, but it's different kind. Think differently. Different kinds of travel tech.
Right.
And
Thank you.
Also, if I may, so I think the more important question is not would you invest in a specific product, but would you invest in a specific team? Because from our experience, teams are sometimes more important than the product itself. There are companies who have amazing products and not so good management and failed. And there are companies who had not so good products, but amazing teams who were able to pivot and to think outside the box and to move companies beyond their initial limits. So I think people are sometimes more important than the product itself.
Yeah, Sony, if I would like to make one additional comment, if I may. So I can agree with what Gary said. So during the pandemics, I was thinking about this. I was like, wow, I said to myself, I've never seen anything like this. The global economy just come to a halt, which is kind of crazy. When we saw financial crisis or any type of crisis that we had, for most people's lifetime when they're working, I would say for the last 10, 20, 30 years, most people haven't seen anything like this. But I went back in history. I said, as a humankind, have we seen anything, pandemics as major as COVID? Yeah, we saw Ebola. I think we saw SARS in 2003, Ebola, I think 2010, and a couple other ones in between. But those are not as in terms of magnitude like COVID. But if you look back to human history, when I did a presentation as a result, looking back the history of pandemics. The closest one we had was literally what Gary said about 100 years ago with the Spanish influenza. But as the human history recorded, as far back as about, I think, 150 AD, we have recorded pandemics. That's with human recording history of pandemics. I'm not going to be surprised if we have pandemics even before 150 AD, but it just wasn't recorded. Back then, there was no paper or anything like that. But to make the story short, I think the funny thing was, when I look at the Spanish influenza compared to what we have in COVID now, there's a lot of similarities in the sense that, people don't like to wear a mask. There were protests about, people don't want to wear a mask. People, when they get cooped up, people got sick, they went to the hospitals, and when they get let out, they were protesting and things like that. So a lot of things that are what we're playing out now, it's like it happened about 100 years ago. So, maybe in a different way, people didn't travel as much, but we had a war going on. That's how actually the virus actually spread it globally. So it's kind of interesting how it played out. So once again, whether people look at this as like an Armageddon, but whether you like it or not, this thing will be over eventually. Yes, it might not be tomorrow, may or may not be next year, but I give you a reference of history. Spanish influenza literally started around 1918 and finished about 3 years later. If you want to use it as a reference point, I don't know how long we might be in this together. There might be a talk that we might have a vaccine early next year. Yeah, but I think the virus is mutating. So once again, this might play out longer than people expect, maybe 2 years, maybe 3, but eventually this will be over. So.
Hello. Hi.
Yes,
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I thought I lost Henry.
No, I finished. I'm not sure it was the connection, but can everyone hear me okay before or
Yep.
no?
I hear you, Henry.
Okay,
Me
great.
too.
Okay, I think it's my connection then. I sort of lost you, Henry. But okay, I think our audience got your answer. I've got a question regarding crypto. So anybody here who doesn't know crypto can skip this question. So I've just read an article that the crypto trading in India, especially the country which opened up to the crypto market, has gone up like more than 100%. So what do you think about the future of crypto, not only in a country like India, but globally? So are you going to see more and more institutional investors in the space, like the family offices, the VCs, or is it going to still be the retail investors who are going to be in the game? So who would like to take this question?
Yeah, so I'll take it. I'll be brief since I just spoke earlier. So I spent a fair amount of time looking at digital securities. I have been saying this for a couple of years. I'm a big believer in blockchain as an application, a lot more than crypto as a currency. Now, don't get me wrong, not that I don't believe in cryptos, but what I'm seeing, I think it's going to take even more of in shape is there's what they call a CBDC. It's called literally what it translates is to central bank digital currency. Why I'm a lot more bullish on that than sort of all these cryptos out there itself. Once again, not that I don't believe in cryptos. I've been saying even as, a couple of years ago, I think sort of confirmed my own belief when I saw Libra came out in June 2019. So when Libra came out, I think there was a lot of backlashes. A lot of central banks around the world were concerned that, Libra want to be the digital currency of all central banks. Yeah. So if you look at the last 300 years with fiat, most of the currencies is issued by central banks within the country, whatever that country is. As COVID is taking shape, as I mentioned, I think some of the Asian countries were really early with digital currency in a sense that maybe like WeChat, but not like crypto based or blockchain based. But I think there's a sense of urgency with central banks around the world to have a digital currency that might be phasing out fiat. So I'm a believer in using some type of blockchain technology, not pure, because blockchain is decentralized. You want to use the pure word blockchain. But if you talk about central bank backed digital currency, there'll be some type of centralized component to it. I think I'm not a lot more bullish with that than just pure crypto itself. Once again, not that I don't believe in cryptos, but I think the CBDC will take off a lot more faster with more full force than just, traditional cryptos, that what we have seen the last few years.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you for those insights. Who else would like to take that question? Gary?
Yeah, I'm not the crypto guy. Although I did invest in one of the very large crypto. I was one of the original investors in it. But I'm not the crypto guru. So if Gavin or Alina had notes on it, it's probably better with them. Blockchain,
Right.
yes or no?
Yeah, Gavin.
I agree with both Henry and Gary. I think conceptually blockchain, if you disentangle it from fintech and crypto, blockchain incredibly useful. A solution. It needs the right implementation. Maybe you would say fintech is an obvious place to start because it's all about exchange of value. Okay, fine. I think crypto remains a fairly exotic investment, if I can put it that way. There's not many people that truly understand what it is, what it does, how it works. And for the average person, they're not likely to start buying things that they don't understand, generally speaking. There's a number of question marks around regulatory question marks. What is it? Is it an asset? Is it security? Is it money? All or none? And it's not, at the moment, it's not a replacement for money currency, fiat currency. It just doesn't have the flexibility. And you take a glib example and say, well, MasterCard can process something like 40,000 transactions. I don't know if it's a second or a minute. And Bitcoin can do 10. It's never going to replace, the pounds and dollars and euros, whatever's in your wallet. And then you begin to question, well, what purpose is it serving? What problem is it solving for most people? And well, it's not solving any problem, you would say. Not enough people use it. And this is where I probably begin to agree with Henry and say, well, if central banks get involved and start producing digital currencies, and I think it might have been Switzerland that recently produced one, or France, I'm not sure, some European country, I can't remember. And you begin to think, well, maybe this is the way forward, because whether or not you agree with them, people tend to have more faith in a central bank being there, and the cryptocurrency, the fears around hacking and more sort of psychological emergent technology concerns. It's a difficult one, and it's difficult to see where it sits and what problems it's truly solving. And now, I mean, again, in a very sort of crude example, there are, 200 or so currencies, maybe less, worldwide, and there are thousands of tokens and what you might call cryptocurrencies worldwide. So how is that helping if all I have to do is exchange between a myriad of currency, fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies? That doesn't help the individual. And again, psychologically, it's never going to get the penetration, I don't think. But I'm not an economist, so what would I know?
Yeah, because the whole idea about blockchain technology is decentralization, but CBDCs are not decentralized. They are owned by the government. So we are going back to centralization again. So we'll see how it pans out.
Yeah.
So PayPal just announced, I don't know, we don't know if it's a confirmed news or it's sort of rumor that leaked. So they're going to introduce crypto selling and buying. And PayPal is a big fintech player. So do you think that's going to cause mass adoption if that happens?
I think this is something I've been asked before, and I think things like blockchain and probably things like cryptocurrencies, these are back office solutions. They're not designed to be used directly or engaged with directly by the average person. It's something that happens in the background. And I always use the example of when people start talking about these things. Well, do you know how an ATM works? Do you know what happens when you put your card in, you press the buttons and your money comes out? More importantly, do you care? No, you've got your money out and you'll go about your day. And I think for the overwhelming majority of people, the same is true of cryptocurrencies. Do you really care how Bitcoin works? If you're using it to buy something, do you really care how it works in the background? No, it just works, and you've heard some good things about it and some bad things about it, maybe, as you may do with the dollars and pounds and euros. So I do think it's a tough call, and I don't think there's necessarily a clear answer there.
So,
okay.
So Sonia, if I may address that question. So I think it depends, right? Sounds like a hedging answer, but it's kind of true. I think it depends, right? I'll tell you why I think it says it depends. So if you look at here in the States, in our country, we're very slow in it. We're supposed to be one of the more innovative countries, but at the same time, we're very slow in adoption in terms of digital currency. Why? Simple. Because it's a function of a couple of reasons. Number one is you have a very powerful group of credit card companies that are lobbying in Washington, D.C. So they want to, let's say they use credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, because it's minting money for them like crazy, right? That's number one. Number two is if you're using credit cards, even though that's a 50-year-old technology, but at the same time, it's what I call the user experience. Using credit cards, actually, whether you like it or not, it's kind of seamless, right? You put in a credit card, 2 seconds later, the transaction is complete. You walk out, you don't have to worry about anything, right? If the technology let's say if the existing technology that we have, it's extremely clunky, then you will see a very quick adoption in somewhere else as an alternative. So I'll give you another example. If I use, like say PayPal, Venmo, and all those stuff, it's pretty seamless as a transaction. So, I did a lot of those, a lot more, fintech, digital payment during COVID than before. I did a lot before, but even more because I didn't want to touch other people's currency. those are a very seamless transaction. I transfer money, I pay somebody, it get transferred, I don't have to worry about it. So I think it's a function of how people believe in cryptos, right? The concern about crypto is it's not backed by anything, even though that people are saying, wow, Bitcoin is the next thing. Yeah, maybe, but is it backed by anything? Yeah, but even the US currency, it's backed by the full faith of the government. The full faith of the government is as long as the US economy is doing well, as long as the US militarily is doing well, then that currency will be strong. So I think, yes, you might be an increase in adoption, but in terms of full force of adoption, it's going to be hard to say. So I think it really depends on how everything plays out. But I think part of it will be CBDC, maybe part of it will be cryptos. I wouldn't be surprised cryptos would be increasing adoption, but I just don't know whether it will be sort of the currency of choice. It might be as a potential investment, but in terms of as a currency, like a digital currency or digital securities, it's hard to be seen by itself.
Great. I really like that. Thank you, Henry. So I have the last question of the panel today. So because Alina mentioned before that when obviously before investments, you look at the team members. So what are the top 5 things to look out before investing in any company besides the team members? What are the other 4 factors to look out?
Well, I can say, do you want, so what I look at is, do they have product market fit, right? Are they generating any revenue? I mean, it's interesting because you probably have some product market fit. So if the regional company in Cluj or Braun in Romania, and you look at that company and you say, geez, they've got regional sales, that's a good thing. I also look, going back to the team, Sonny, look at the team. What kind of team do they have? Do they have one marketing person? Do they have one technology person there? Do they share ideas? Do they have less than 4 co-founders on the team? So you're not trying to figure out if they're going to make decisions. It's going to take forever. And how do they work together? I look for it. Are they positive, right? On one side, it's like my partner now is a bit more pessimistic than myself, but we level each other out. It helps us level the playing field and come up with ideas. And are they in it for the long haul? Are they really committed, and do they have the right grit to get this stuff done? So revenue, product market fit, have they done customer discovery? Have they really gone out, themselves and going out and try to get the first deals and have customers try to grab it out of their hands and say, I really want it. This is the greatest thing that I've seen. So, I mean, it's like, it's a KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. If they got revenue, that's a good thing. If they got a mixed team, that's a good thing. Are they regionally diverse? Are they smart? And they have, for instance, do they have R&D being done in places like Russia, the Ukraine, Belarus, Romania, where they've got incredible kind of talent and at a less of a cost? And do they have operational folks at the company that have had success, right? Have they had access? Have they done IPOs? Do people know who they are? Do they know what they're talking about? So it's simple.
Absolutely. Very, very valid points. So startups, if you're listening to this session, you're tuned in, please follow Gary. So I'd like to take that question from other speakers as well. So what are the 4 other factors besides talent and team members?
I would also like to add understanding the market, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs who, when they come for the first meeting and you ask them, which is your competition? They say, we don't have a competition. And that's a very bad answer, because it means that first, you either didn't look around to see if there's anybody else there, or 2, you have a bad product which nobody needs, or an unsuitable product, so to say. Yeah. So understanding the market and having the capacity to grow, because assuming that we make an investment, the second question is, are you capable of using the money which we gave in order to scale and get the traction you need? And you need to trust the entrepreneurs that they can do that they are able to choose the right steps in order to go there, because having the money in the account can sometimes be a very big challenge for startups, and this is also 2 points that we look at. And
Awesome.
of course, I totally agree with Gary. So this is just to add something on top of it, not to.
Sure. Thank you, Alina. Henry, Gavin, anything to add? Yeah.
I think there is one thing for me, and I agree completely with Gary and Alina. But something I always think about is, if I'm going to invest in this idea, in this thing, whatever it may be, is there something I can add? Is there something I can bring? And it sounds quite selfish, but it's quite important, is because as an investor, if you get into trouble, this is your money on the line. So take a vested interest in your money. And I kind of think, if there is, particularly in built environment where I have skills and knowledge, contacts, and so on, is there something I can bring to add to create a new market, to put them in connection with the right places if they need to do, I don't know, some testing, MVPs or proof of concepts, whatever it may be? Or is there some operational need? Is there some advice I can bring? Whatever it may be. And that's, if it's something I don't know anything about, obviously it's difficult, and I would think twice about the investment, because I just don't know. I don't think there's anything I can add. But yeah, if I can bring something to the table to help them, that's always a factor I do think about.
Right. Thank you. Henry, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree more with my fellow panelists, but I think I'll just add a couple more that may not be mentioned, may not have mentioned. So I think the business being scalable is extremely important. If it's not scalable, it's going to be very difficult to grow big or very, very big. So I think the scalability of the business model is pretty important. And then also, I always said this all the time, I think timing is extremely important. Timing it's everything. I'll give you an example. So I think Gary mentioned, Zoom, yes, being at the right place at the right time, but I think they did that because they really have a pretty decent product. I think they grew from 30 million users to literally 300, 10x in literally in a month or two. Zoom was founded about 5 years ago by Eric Yuan. He'd been working on it, with that type of experience, I think since the mid 90s or mid to late 90s. Think about this. If Zoom was founded 20 years ago or 10 years ago, would Zoom be as successful as today? If you have to ask me, nobody knows the answer, right? But if you have to ask me, I don't think so. They probably would have withered or died before they became successful. So the timing of the opportunity is extremely important. I said it all the time. You can be right with your idea, but if you're wrong with your timing, the answer is you're wrong overall. So companies that, a lot of successful invested early on, if they have invested certain ideas too early, they were wrong. So once again, timing is everything.
I think I'd agree to that. Timing is very important. Thank you, Henry. So this actually brings us to the end of the session, more or less. I'd like to know where, if people from our network or the startups or the investors looking for some collaboration, so where can they find you and what can you offer? Gary, what are you offering and where can they find you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm looking for incredible startups, right? Primarily growth stage startups that want to go global.
Go global.
And go global. I almost said global, but go global. Anyhow, so we're looking for them. You can find me on LinkedIn. I write for Forbes Magazine. I also write a lot in Medium, so you can catch my articles there. I write a lot about startups. You can get me at GSD Venture Studios, Get Shit Done Venture Studios. So I'm there. Or
right.
Gary at gsdvs.com. I'd love to hear from you. I think there's incredible opportunities out there. Let me know.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Alina?
I'm available on all social media platforms with my name, of course, and also on catalystromania.com and 3tscapitalpartners.com. We primarily interested in basically what Gary is also looking for. But only that we are focused on another geography, so we can develop divide maybe the startups, Gary. So the startups active in IT&C in Romania and neighboring countries, Eastern Europe as the main focus. Eastern Europe, yeah.
Okay, great. Gavin?
Sure. Well, for my part, built environment technology startups, I know that's a bit all-encompassing, but anything that is associated with a built environment, so it could be real estate, so prop tech, it could be build tech, so anything for the construction industry, smart cities, I don't know, power distribution. It gets quite all-encompassing, but anything in that space is certainly in my area of interest and expertise, dare I say. But I find a lot of this is, as the panel have already said, is about people, places, and timing. And if you just want to have a conversation, even a sense check, does this make sense to you as a non-expert in whatever it is, not working in this field? I'm more than happy to do that. And because you never know what's going to come out of a conversation. I've had some very, very odd and fortunate conversations, and it's led me to where I am now. So yeah, get in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn, Google search. I'll probably turn up somewhere as well. So, but yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best route. Thank you.
Henry?
Yep. So I think early on I mentioned I spend a fair amount of time when I'm so once again I have two hats. So if a company needs help on the finance side, do feel free to reach out. Interim CFO, fractional CFO, and the second on the investment side, the venture partner side, I spend a fair amount of time looking at fintech, blockchain, consumer, AI, ML, IoT. But if you have business that you think it's easy to understand, it's once again all the above that we just mentioned. The last question, do feel free to reach out. I use the LinkedIn a lot, so you can search the name Henry On or Henry H, the middle initial On, or it can simply email in this personal email. I'll leave the work email with people I know. The personal email is also on my LinkedIn. It's henry.h.on@gmail.com.
Awesome, fantastic. Before I pass the floor to my colleague Elena, I just want to say tomorrow, exactly the same time that we started this event today, I'm going to host a great startup from Asia who are into cross-border payment solutions based on the blockchain technology. So it's a mix of blockchain and traditional finance. And we have judges from the region as well, Southeast Asia, China. So please, watch out for this session tomorrow from our VCTV. You can get the links. Probably Elena can help after this. And yes, we have fantastic panels coming up throughout the month. So stay tuned. Now I pass the floor to Elena to conclude this session. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to our online audience.